tired of doing your own research for this game? Are you too lazy to look up certain interactions or see if things actually work? Well, today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the tedious aspects or the annoying, or maybe just some things that you wanted to know about Granblue Fantasy or you would appreciate knowing. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you basically spent any time playing Granblue Relink recently, and you've gotten to the end game, or if you've gotten a terminus weapon, you're probably curious about what exact treasures or what materials you need in order to awaken your weapon to full. And thankfully, there's this handy dandy chart courtesy of Marcus. It's the guy on the right side. You could find him there. Thankfully, he made a Google Sheets that includes not only the terminus weapon and all the resources or materials that you need to farm out for it and where to get them. He also did it for the Ascension weapon, which is really helpful or useful if you aren't at the point where you can get the terminus weapon, but you still want to get a little bit of oomph out of your weapon, get additional stats, etc, etc. Now, to be clear, not only did he give you a location to farm, he kind of gave you all of them, which is really nice because sometimes you don't like fighting, specific stages because your character isn't good against it. So as you can see here, there's hard, maniac, etc. Sometimes very hard, pretty straightforward, or it's pretty self-explanatory. Not much needs to be explained here. Thank you so much for the awakening chart. Let's move on. Okay, now the next section has to do with what exactly you need to forge weapons. But I have to give you a bit of a disclaimer. Although every single character in the game has 4 weapons that they can craft, the materials required for each one kind of differ. So instead of trying to pretend I know every single resource that you need for every single character in every single scenario, what I am going to explain to you or show you is kind of a trend or a pattern that I noticed across every single character, and kind of just things that you need to generally pre-farm, or you should be trying to pre-farm in case if you want to craft all the weapons. Now, this is an Imgur album that I made involving the weapon forge patterns and the material list that you can expect or should be farming out for if you're trying to pre-farm. If you look at this first weapon from Granblue, you'll notice that what you need is 1 champion merit, 10 fire shards, 2 fire orbs, 3 flame beast claws, and also 1 flame beast plate. A lot of these are tongue twisters. I will not tell you how many takes it took to say that. But in any case, what you'll notice here is that one of the weapons that you need to craft requires 5 total treasures, or 5 categories of treasures. And if we take a look at another character's weapon, you'll see that the format is similar, but in this case, instead of needing fire, you need wind materials. Now, if we take a look at another one of Granblue's weapons, you'll see that although it does need wind this time, you actually only need 4 materials, or 4 types of materials. So the exact number of materials that you need to forge, or the kinds of materials that you need to forge, in this case, are both different than the original gauntlet that we mentioned in the first place. I looked at another character's weapon, Fairy, just to confirm if this was the case, and it is here. As you can see, you need 4 materials, but they are also different compared to, again, what Granblue would need, or what Fairy would need for, I guess, her main weapon. It's also the case for Fairy, where you only need 1 champion merit and 3 braids in order to craft this weapon. Now, as I mentioned before, the weapons that you need, or the materials that you need for each one, will kind of differ just based on the characters. But something that you can kind of take away from all this is that you will always have a weapon that only requires 2 resources, you will always have a weapon that needs 4 resources, and you will always have a weapon that needs 5 resources. To be clear, there are 4 craftable weapons, so that does mean that for the resource where you end up needing 4 resources to craft a weapon, there will be 2 total weapons that do specifically need a total of 8 materials to craft the both of them. But I hope this helps, because in terms of the materials that you need, they do kind of seem similar. You're not going that far away from either needing a water orb or an earth orb, or certain materials like bizarre wings or griffin feathers. I do wish I could give you a bit more help on this topic, but in all honesty, it is a bit random as to like what weapons need what. So you're gonna have to kind of just look at the resource list and take it from there. Now, another thing that I've been getting a lot of questions about recently is the best stages to farm. And after the last AFK video that I made about the best stages to farm, I decided to make a list with all the pros, or why you should farm for certain stages and what it offers you and the time that it takes to clear. So let's just get straight into it. The first stage that I probably spend 99.99999% of my time farming, or AFK farming, is the Maniac stage called I See a Grim Vision. This is a stage that you farm specifically if you want to get Curios, and you fight against Garrison because he's pretty much just a bot that can get stunned and gets one-shot. And this album, again, will also be included in my description and alongside the other album I have when it comes to the weapons, just for proof. But long story short, as I read here, or as I included in the caption for this specific run, it says that you have an 80% chance for a Curio, which is like a rough estimate, but usually I get about 8 out of 10 for, my total curio count. You get 15 Raphael coins. You can also sell a lot of the resources here, the treasures and stuff, if you aren't trying to trade them in for silver centrums. And of course, trading them in gives you knickknack vouchers, which is nice for sigils. But before you say that, oh, well, Connor, you should be trading in a lot of these treasures, for silver centrums and stuff. A couple things, because while that is definitely valid and I understand where you're coming from, you will probably not get the perfect 3 or however many total resources that you need to actually trade in a centrum all while AFK farming the same thing, which again is kind of an issue. So you aren't really that easily able to trade in, you know, just the war axes or just the war axes that you would get from this stage for, you know, silver centrums. And before we get into the biggest kind of outlier here, which is just the fact that you can get silver centrums themselves from clearing the stage, I do also have to mention that if you want to farm for silver centrums, there is a stage called I See a Chromatic Vision where you do drop all the resources needed to trade in a silver centrum all on the same stage all at the same time. And for that stage, it drops the horns, or the beaks or whatever it's called, which is nice if you're trying to farm for silver centrums. But ultimately, since you're already getting silver centrums at a pretty ridiculous rate while also being able to farm for curios, I personally found it better to farm for this, and I'll show in a later screenshot, but at this point I've now got like 230 silver centrums just from AFK farming this specific stage. It's kind of ridiculous, guys. It is what it is. Now in these next 2 screenshots, what I'm going to be showing is basically another run where I was able to get a silver centrum, not get a curio, in case you're curious about what the total, you know, possibilities for drops are. Sometimes you get a curio, sometimes you won't get a curio, sometimes you get a silver centrum, sometimes you won't. But in addition to this, I did also want to just include a run, or, you know, like the speed or timeliness of clearing this run. It took me 39 seconds, which as I mentioned in the caption there, decently slower than average. I've gotten really as close as literally 15 seconds to clearing this because it, again, if you have a character like Eugen, or if you have characters that have really built out or fleshed out kits that have glass cannon, etc., you can get them to build up their gauge faster, or get nimble, or they get cascade, or they get quick cooldown, and they spam all their abilities. But for me, what I found was that the thing that kind of makes this run go insanely faster is, number one, if you have Percival, but I haven't built him quite yet because it's really tough to farm out Slimepede and farm out a bunch of weapon materials. But the other thing is that for this specific run and for the characters that I have here, the run being cleared in under 30 seconds is pretty much dependent on whether or not Eugen lands all of his armor piercing rounds. His armor piercing rounds hits in like a big circle, and sometimes they just don't land. So basically, if they do land, it's a fast run. If they don't, it is what it is. Now, the next stage that I wanted to talk about, which is something that I already mentioned in the past, is Worst Vacation Ever, and I just really wanted to fully explain my thoughts on why I specifically think that this stage is so valuable. And number one, again, it's an AFK-able stage. It gives you crit sigil 5+. It guarantees you a curio. It does give you 17 of the fortitude shards, which is really, really valuable. And you also have a really high chance of silver centrum. Now, like I mentioned in the past section, although you may be getting the chilling eyes, or you may be getting the war axes, you would likely not be completing the other half, or you would not be getting the other treasure that you would need to trade these in for silver centrums. And ultimately, again, if you're farming this, you have a decently good chance. You have a decent chance of getting silver centrums anyways, so waiting to try and trade those in for silver centrums is kind of weird. But between the fortitude shards, the crit sigil, honestly the guaranteed curio, and the silver centrum chance, this is a really stacked stage. And in addition, compared to some of the other proud stages, this boss does not really AoE so significantly, or the AoEs are not so punishing that if you get hit by it, you get one shot. And ultimately, because you have the opportunity to knock down some of the bosses with like the pillars and stuff, or they have the opportunity to hide behind stuff, I definitely prefer this over some of the other stages. I tried another stage that has like the ancient dragon, and while it was a little bit of a faster clear, I believe I clocked in a run, and I'll show you that one later, where I think I clocked in a run at around like 4 minutes and 30 seconds as opposed to Worst Vacation's 5-minute run. I was close to dying, and I had basically like dropped to like 10% worth of my critical bar, or like maybe 25%, just because there's fire on the ground, I'm getting hit and everything's smacking into me, which is not very fun. So now if I move along, you can take a look here. The run was 5 minutes and 30 seconds, which is, again, decently slower than usual. And I also included the Melting Pot of Hostility additional run, which, again, if you really want to farm either of these two stages, technically speaking, I think any of the major bosses, like, you know, none of the Manig Armors or the Fury Canes, I think a lot of these proud stages are pretty farmable, but I definitely think that Melting Pot of Hostility got me a little bit more on edge. Like, I wanted to check over and make sure I didn't fail the stage more frequently than I did, specifically with the Garrison stage. Garrison's just a skeleton as well, which is like pretty straightforward and easy to hit. Whereas the Ancient Dragon, it's a dragon, and he's also got like the Infernodiles, which kind of beat up your entire team and kind of stun your team. I will say that for every single variation of team and AI squad that I have, I am including glass cannon. So whenever possible, I prefer not getting hit. And sometimes I've seen the Infernodiles like double dash into someone and activate your glass cannon. Enough rambling though, let's move on. Okay, now I know thus far a lot of what I've been talking about has been AFK, but what if you wanted to farm actively? I give you Roost and Rain, which is honestly one of the most insane Fortitude Shard or weapon leveling upgrade shard stages to date, or that I know of. It gives you 29 Fortitude Shards, which is insane. That's great value, and no other stage gives you similar value for how quickly that you can clear this. Again, not only do you get the chance of a curio, you also get the Raphael coins, the 29 Fortitude Shards, and obviously you can sell the rest of the resources. I also wanted to just give you a run showing again how fast this was. It was about a 3-minute run, which is not great, especially for a maniac run, but you do have to run, and you know, I'm not really doing anything myself. You can see here my Vasaraga literally did 38,000 honors worth of contribution, and as I mentioned in the caption, literally all I had done there was just dash, and I wanted to, like, you know, speed through the stage, so I ended up hitting a couple of mobs. Not that relevant. Long story short, 3-minute run where I don't actually have to play the game that much, or it can even go faster basically, and all I have to do is just walk up and, you know, AFK with Vasaraga at the boss fight, which is still technically not playing, but in case your gear is worse than mine, this just goes to show that you could definitely do this, especially with competent AI, and you could do it in 3 minutes, 29 shards, great. Okay, now the next question I've been getting a decent amount is when you unlock Transmarvel, or when you unlock stuff like the level 3 transmutation, and this is kind of just quick. It's just kind of like a quick clarification if you're curious. You unlock level 3 transmutation once you unlock Maniac, and additionally you gain access to Transmarvels after you've unlocked Proud Mode. If we move along to the journal section for a second, I do want to talk about something that's pretty underspoken, or I guess no one has really looked into, which is number one, what are the actual rewards that you get from doing this? And I basically went through and looked at what resources or what rewards were reasonable or actually worth getting. And although you could definitely get stuff like Copper Spellbook, which is okay but not great, the thing that I do want to talk about is the Azurite Splendors, because in all honesty, you actually get access to a lot of them. Specifically for Azurite Splendors in the journal, if you unlock all of a character's mastery nodes, you are actually given an Azurite Splendor, which is really cool because I know a lot of people are kind of annoyed with having the farm sigils, myself included. So if you do want to unlock or get a free Splendor and you're kind of annoyed at trying to farm the Rainbow or Prismatic Slime, this is also a way for you to get Azurite Splendors in case you're too annoyed with the other methods. Moving along within the journal, you do also gain access to certain sigils should you complete something like uncap each of Catalina's weapons 6 times. And the reason why I think this one is so special, or this one in particular is so interesting, is because it gives you a critical hit rate 5+. You'll probably know that I've been trying to make a really wacky, wild Lancelot build, and something that I need, and probably some of you guys are also probably looking for, is a critical hit rate 5+ with a damage cap. And since it's such a pain to farm, any way that you can get this, or even if early on you want to gain access to this, this is a great way to get a 5+ sigil, and it doesn't require any RNG. It's pretty much just uncap all the weapons. Anytime that you can avoid RNG in this game, it's probably nice, so consider this if you do want a free sigil. Okay, now the final trophy I want to talk about, mostly because it's kind of comical and kind of a joke more than it's actually good, is Armed to the Teeth, because it says obtain 100 different weapons and you get 1 Damascus ingot. Now if you aren't familiar with what the Damascus ingot does, it bypasses 1 specific upgrade level for a weapon, which is an extremely ridiculous reward for literally crafting every single weapon in the game. Anyways guys, these were what I consider to be the more tedious or annoying things to look up or figure out, or I just wasn't told, and I hope you learned something or enjoyed or found any of these things to be useful. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, subscribe. Let me know what you think about, honestly, anything relating to the game right now. If you think that some of these things should be changed, anything in between. Thank you so much for all the recent support, again, with the Granblue series. I appreciate it a lot. Feel free to let me know what kind of content you want to see next time. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Hope you have a lovely day. I'll see you on the next one. Adios.